Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking to Brendan Colbert, particularly about his work Repose that he wrote in 2014 and has been played by Michael, Kieran, Harvey a couple of years later, in fact 2018. So without any further ado, we'll introduce you to Brendan. Brendan, welcome.
Thank you, Joel.
And Repose, I heard it. I was at the 2018 concert at the Church of All Nations in Carlton, and I listened to it through, and I thought this was stylistically a different work that you would usually write. And is it because repose, meaning state of sleep or rest or tranquility, but also the fact that the subtitle is For Absent Friends? Did that have a relationship in the stylistic way that you approach this work?
Well, yeah, to a certain extent it did, because the program note, in fact, that I wrote for the work refers to it as a work that looks back, which was before I started writing a lot of music, back to when I was younger, listening to classical music, listening to prog rock, a bit of jazz, all those sorts of things. And it looks back to a time when, as I say, the future was full of infinite possibilities and friends and family were immortal, which of course is clearly no longer the case. But so it was a bit of a nostalgic sort of trip for me in that regard. And as such, it's very atypical of the sort of music that I generally write, as you point out. Most of my material being a lot more sort of aggressive and in your face. And this is very much a gentle and introspective sort of work. It's kind of modal / tonal, it wobbles back and forth between the two. And the rest of my work, of course, has got nothing in common with that whatsoever.
So is a bit of it's a standalone. It's a bit out of the.
Oh, it's very much a standalone. Very much. It's totally atypical.
Right.
Yep.
And are you still happy with the piece as a standalone? Or you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I quite enjoyed Michael's performance of it, and I really liked the piece. Mm-hmm. Which is not to say that I'm ever going to write a piece like that again. It's just a matter of here's something that I wanted to write, and I've written it, and now I move on to other things.
But also, I think in one way demonstrates that you're not totally wedded to a particular style or a particular philosophical approach, that you can, if so desire, you can move to wherever you wish to move to facilitate the outcome you wish to facilitate.
So for me, it underlines the fact that the other music that I write by choice. I've had people tell me in the past that if I wrote more accessible stuff, I'd get more commissions, get more funding, all that sort of thing. Not terribly interested in that. I'm more interested in writing the music that I want to write, and that's the music that I want to listen to. And this piece in particular, Repose, was written in the year following the composition of my double concerto for piano, trumpet and small orchestra. And that was a big, noisy, aggressive work dealing with similar themes, as in it was working through of grief and the anger that's associated with that. And then Repose, in a sense, is being backward looking, is actually more to do with acceptance of such things. A more innocent view of the world, if you like.
And piano is a fairly prominent part of your output, solo piano works. I think you've written up to about 15 of them. So is piano?
A bunch, yeah.
So is piano something you quite like writing for, or is it, or you much prefer bigger forces, or?
If someone wants me to write them a piece, I'll write for anything. But the piano was my instrument when I was younger. I wasn't a terribly good pianist, but was reasonable playing keyboards in prog rock bands and faking it basically. But I've always loved the piano, and I really enjoy writing for good players. When you get the opportunity to write for someone who you know is going to play very well and put in all the work, well, that's a total pleasure, and I've been lucky in that regard, both with the concerto and the work that I've been lucky enough to have Michael perform.
And has Michael played most of your work?
He's played about half a dozen of my piano works now. 4 or 5 solos and a trio.
Mhm.
And his performances have been excellent.
Saying that back in the day,
Yep.
you started out as a budding musician.
Yep.
Was it a budding musician on piano or keyboards? Is that where you started from?
Yeah.
So do you still compose via that instrument and then and fan it out from there, or
No. When the starting point for any piece that I write, well, it's normally limited, of course, by the forces for which it's commissioned. If I'm writing a piece for myself, as in between commissions or whatever, they're likely to be the smaller works. But otherwise, it's a matter of the forces for which it's commissioned, and that in turn suggests coloristic ideas, all sorts of things, and you just then flesh it out from there. I don't think in terms when I'm thinking of a new piece, I don't hear the piano in my head and then orchestrate it. It's a matter of if you're writing for guitar and glockenspiel, then those are the colours that you have in your head when you're doing the work.
And you've raised a good point, colour, because I think probably at the end of the day, from my listening to your music, colour is probably the most important part that you're trying to relay to an audience. And is that, am I right there? The coloristic aspects?
Well, yeah, you're certainly not wrong. There was a colleague of mine some years ago when I had a piece played by the Queensland Symphony Orchestra. He said to me, he referred to my work. He says, I was a painterly composer, as in I use colours to compose with, and I don't have a problem with that. I think it's a pretty fair indication of how I work.
Is that it's that myself and this other gentleman thought like that, but do you think like that when you're composing? I don't mean to say, oh my God, I'm going into my red phase, or I'm going into a blue patch.
No. Well, my work tends to be textural, and therefore it's all about colour, rhythm and colour, and that's pretty much what it is. I'm not writing whistleable tunes, and I'm not overly fond of endless series of extended techniques for the sake of extended techniques. If they provide a colour that I want for a particular piece, well, that's well and good. I'm not afraid of extended techniques, but I just don't embrace them for the sake of embracing them.
So when we listen to Repose,
Yep.
after this interview, what sort of coloristic ideas were you trying to portray in something like that?
Well, it is contemplative. It's a part of the idea was using the piano almost like excuse me, bells tolling in a sense, and just sort of drawing from that, extending on that, and there are moments of slightly more aggressive bent in it, but it's the acceptance of the grief from the piece that had gone before in that very real sense. That's the subtext, of course, but that's what I put into the piece. Doesn't mean that anyone else has got to find that in there. If they just listen to it and take out of it what they want, or what they hear, what they understand the piece to be about, I'm perfectly fine with that too.
Well, I think at the end of the day, what you're trying to convey comes through with the title being Repose, which is a state of sleep or tranquility or rest or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that comes across very well. So it might be a good time to cease this, and we'll have a listen to the piece Repose by Michael Kieran Harvey, recorded on April the 13th, 2018 at the Church of All Nations in Carlton. So thank you very much, Brendan, very much for your time.
No worries, Joel.